Yeah, make me a co-host.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
If you
Wait,
would.
I can't. I'm not even signed in.
So we are recording as well. I found something to record. It's now 7 o'clock. Thank you for allowing me to record this session, everyone, and thank you for being here. This is a special sacred segment on the power of forgiving the unforgivable. And we have some beautiful guest speakers with us, some incredible souls. I'm very, very grateful for all of you being here. It's not by chance that we met. You know, nothing is by chance. I'm a great believer in the power of synchronicity. And I think that we're all on this planet at this time for a very particular reason. I'm also a great believer in, you know, soul teachings, shall we say. My name's Alexis Constantinou, and the reason that this group was founded was to have a platform for other people to share their experiences so that we could all heal together, and also share metaphysical knowledge and metaphysical knowledge about not only the law of attraction, but the power of the mind, metaphysics and psychology, and all things spiritual, you know, whether they are helpful to the individual or to the collective of the planet. That was the intention behind this group. So I'm very, very glad that you're all here. Perhaps we could go around the group and just introduce ourselves, and then we'll hear from Elizabeth, who is going to do an introduction for us. So I'm going to ask Christiane to say hello first, as she's first on the list. Are you there?
I knew you were going to do that, Alexis. I thought, I hope he doesn't call on me first. But I'm Christiane Schul, and I'm a writer and intuitive life coach and breathwork practitioner and facilitator. I do group circles and experiential gatherings and so on.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to see you. Glad you're here.
Nice to see you.
And Dr. Anna Stone, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anna Stone. I'm a community college professor in Los Angeles. I research the intersection of trauma and psychic ability in individuals, because there is a correlation that I found in my research. And I also have a history of that exact thing, childhood trauma, CPTSD. And so I help other people work through that as well, and transmute that negativity into something positive. Hopefully that's the goal. So it's nice to meet everybody, and I look forward to learning from you guys.
Incredible. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Brenda, nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. I am very excited to be here and to also meet the panel and everybody here as well. I'm a life coach. I am an actor with a solo show based on my life story. I'm a director, a storytelling mentor, digital course creator. I wrote the book, My Father Killed My Mother and Married My Aunt, Forgiving the Unforgivable. So that's where my forgiveness work started over 20 years ago. I do have a Hero of Forgiveness Award I was honored to receive, and I'm really passionate about this subject and really excited to learn from all of you as well. Oh, and I'm in Los Angeles, so maybe there's a rendezvous sometime soon.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Carl, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Preisler. I'm a retired senior IT manager, director, I guess. But from my earliest years, I've been interested in the brain and spirit, in how we fit into this world that we call Earth. I got called to be a trance medium by spirit many years ago now. So I do most of my work as a trance medium. I work with my main guide, Katarang, and with other light beings to bring through wisdom and guidance and philosophy, but also to do healing through the mode of trance, where the guide's energy flows through me to act. I'm acting as a conduit, basically, to help remove energetic blockages and release trauma in that regard. I'm also trained hypnotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist, and Reiki master. And I'm so looking forward to today because I just think the stories that you have to share from what you've shared before are so powerful. And there is such great transformation available to all of us once we kind of embrace the unembraceable and dig within, and the ability that you all have here to share your own stories and to share that truth and that healing message with all of us and with so many others, I just think is awesome. I'm so looking forward to today's talk.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you. The beautiful Kate, you're next.
Thank you. Well, my name is Kate Thorvaldsen, and I'm an author and also a motivation speaker, or at least in the beginning of being a motivation speaker. Because of my past and all the trauma and all of this, and since I've been experiencing deep depression from a very young age, I've always been interested in how the mind is working. So I've been studying the mind, and yeah, and also how the society reacts to people who are depressed, and psychiatrists and all these kind of things to, yeah. So you can see over the years I've discovered a lot of big holes and a lot of things that actually needs to be done with the topic. So my latest book is called Keeping Your Head Above Water, and that one is talking about different kind of depressions and also what you can do without doing drugs and all these kind of things. And of course there's also a different plateau, or I don't find the right word for it, when you are starting to talk about deep and heavy depressions, and that are also chronic depressions, because most people in a daily life, they are having one label on all of them, but of course there's a huge difference and you need to treat them in different ways. And as I have discovered now, more or less there's just one thing that they treat the heavy depressions with, and that is drugs. But I think there's another solution to it.
So glad you're doing this amazing work. Thank you for sharing that. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
And the wonderful Elizabeth Kipp is here as well. And let's hear from you now. You're going to do an introduction. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alexis. And good to see you again, Carl. And wonderful to meet the rest of you. Thank you so much for bringing this panel together, for bringing the group together, and for on this topic. Yeah, I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist, a trauma trained and yoga informed addiction recovery coach, and ancestral clearing practitioner.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. So you're going to lead us in this introduction to this group today, and I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you for agreeing to this.
Oh my goodness, it's my honor. I think I'll start by defining the landscape we're working in as I see it. The physician and beautiful trauma specialist, Dr. Gabor Mate, tells us that trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you because of what happened to you, and it's because you're alone with the hurt. So that's powerful right there. And the other thing that I have found to be very helpful is the understanding that it's not my fault what happened to me, but it is my responsibility to heal it, to heal the fallout from it, right? So that's kind of the landscape that I would like to bring in. And the piece that I think I'll share, just a little piece of my story. So I've had a number of traumas, but the one that left the deepest mark and was the most profound to heal was when I was 14. My mother was undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder and an alcoholic, and she had some kind of cold or something, and so the doctor put her on antibiotics, and she was drinking, which is a really bad combination, which nobody knew back then. And we were in the kitchen cooking dinner, organizing dinner, and she turned around and just freaked out and ran at me with a kitchen knife, a carving knife, and just right up against my neck. And I'm 14, and I'm kind of used to abuse from her, but that was terrifying. And I had a really powerful experience. That was powerful enough. This is what happened next. I was up against the counter with my hands up, and I was sure I was going to die. And I felt this energy come right through the top of my head and blow right out my hand, the palms of my hands, towards my mom. And she moved back. And she turned around, she dropped the knife, and she walked away and collapsed into a corner in the other room.
Wow.
And that was amazing, right? So that was a powerful experience. Talk about psychic trauma and psychic. That was just, so that happened. The meaning that I made of her action, though, at that age in my life was that if my own mother wanted to take me out, I didn't deserve to be on the planet. So I had a massive self-esteem issue. And I didn't have anywhere to go with that. I told my father, and he just swept the whole thing under the rug, and I didn't have any therapy. I did my own therapy. It turns out I was doing a version of Richard Schwartz's parts work, but it was my own invention at the time, back in like the early 70s. So that was kind of interesting. And anyway, it left a mark. And I was in later years, I was able to actually process that with a pain management psychiatrist, a trauma person in a group. And I had this understanding. Ultimately, my conclusion is that my mother, I came into this life with my mother the way she was my teacher of compassion. So that was my journey from, oh my God, I don't even know what to do with this. It's so horrible, to, oh, look at the gifts that this was. So I went from that can't be forgiven to, it wasn't even the realm of being able to forgive. It was like that unforgivable. It wasn't even in the realm, right, to being processing through. So it is possible, right? And then I find out later, just a few years ago, I find out that my mother, when she was just in high chair as a toddler, or maybe a 8-month-old or something, she witnessed her father do that to her mother, try and kill her mother. And I just, I was already in ancestral work and studying how trauma moves through the generations, but that really blew my mind. And it made me, it was very humbling to me. It was very humbling about, it made me realize the forces that we have within us, all the influences that we have within us. And it also made me, so the forces, like those kinds of forces, but it also made me realize, wow, they also have their gifts. So I came in with the burdens and the gifts of my ancestors. And so I have their burdens, but I have their gifts to process, right? So that makes us a very powerful individual, right? And I just thought I would bring that in. And I thought for today, it's short, but I thought I would bring in an ancestral clearing for the effects of intergenerational trauma. It's difficult to, it can be difficult to clear the trauma in the present if we haven't released the burden from the past. I hope that makes sense. And the way ancestral clearing works, which is a trademark register process, I'm a practitioner of it. John Newton of Health Beyond Belief teaches this, and Howard Wills pioneered it. And it's basically a prayer that we ask creator or consciousness or source or whatever you want to call whatever made all this. We ask it to help us release that which no longer serves us. And we use the word forgive to mean offering up that which no longer serves us. So I'm going to just take you through this prayer. And if you could just present yourself, everyone here and everyone listening to the replay, as this works just as powerfully in the replay. If you could just notice, find a comfortable space to sit and notice the sensation in the body and kind of give it a rating from 0 to 10 in terms of intensity. And just breathe normally as these words wash over you. Higher power, creator, Holy Father, Great Spirit, Divine Mother, Infinite One, oneness. You're known by many names, yet you are one. We ask humbly and gratefully for us and all our ancestors and all their relations through all space, time, dimension, realms, and lifetimes. For all sickness and the ensuing grief and suffering. For all the times we stood powerless and unable to ease the pain of our loved ones. For survivors' guilt in plagues and pandemics that swept through our lives and our communities. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For misunderstandings, disputes, arguments, fights that broke out, and resultant injuries, whether intentional or unintentional. For all the guilt anyone carried because of it. For every raid, assault, incursion, battle, war, and Holocaust, and for all the angst, the betrayals, the fierce anger, and any guilt we felt because of these actions, or guilt that others felt because of our actions. For all unresolved resentment, enduring aversions, loathing, or outright hate that erupted and continued unrelentingly, intergenerationally. Please help us to forgive one another and forgive ourselves for once and for all of it, no matter what it was. Please and thank you for all secrets, hidden pacts, and for the times we were sworn to silence under duress, for any abuse, slavery, torture, or any other injustice, and all that arose in the lineage because of these events, including all physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual illness. Please help us all forgive each other and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. Please help us release each other and release ourselves and find peace with one another and find peace with ourselves for once and for all, now and forever. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And just take a breath in and let it out and notice how that feels in the body. I think the last thing I'm going to say on this, because I have a whole program I do on forgiveness, 40 days of forgiveness, and right there in the middle somewhere is forgiving the unforgivable. Forgiveness is a process, right? And we heal at the rate we heal. There's really no rushing it. There are things that we can get help with it, right? But it's kind of got its own energy, and I've learned to respect that, not just for myself, but with the people that I've worked with. Alexis, thank you so much for giving me this honor today.
Thank you for the spiritual and timeless wisdom that you've imparted to all of us, and for that healing. Really grateful. Thank you. So if you'd like to know more about Elizabeth Kipp's work, it's elizabethkipp.com. Is that right? No, would you share your website, please?
Yeah, you've got to put a hyphen in there. Elizabeth-Kipp.com.
Elizabeth-Kipp.com.
Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me on that.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Appreciate you. Okay, well, I would like to start with Kate, if we may, and I would like you all to take 10 minutes to share your story and journey with healing and the forgiveness journey that you individually went through to today. And I know 10 minutes isn't a very long time. I'll give you a 2-minute count-in when you have 2 minutes left, if that's okay. Kate, is that okay with you?
Yes, good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, are you happy to start?
Yeah, I can start. Not a problem.
Okay, great.
Yeah. No, in my family, it was my father that was the worst. The problem started actually already when I was a very, very young kid. He's a psychopath and a narcissist of the worst kind. And he was kind of isolating my mother from everyone else in very high degree. So the first 4 years of my life, I didn't have any kind of playmates. I didn't play with other kids, so I didn't get the involvement that kids get together when they're playing. So when I was around 4 years old, then he was threatening my mother to cut her heels off for some no reason, and we kind of escaped from the house in the middle of the night. And after that, there was a divorce going on, and we moved to another place. And I had to start kindergarten, and of course that was a shock to me because I wasn't used to other kids. So there was a lot of drama thing there for me to be around other, kids, humans, for that matter. But my father, he kept still on coming to our house, still hanging around. And then he met another young lady, a young woman. So it was really, really nice. And well, he's not the faithful kind, so he was kind of still trying to control my mother, and still he was together with this woman. And they kept on doing this for a while. And then she got afraid of him, so she wanted to try to escape him too. But he was a very, very clever man, and he was finding her. Didn't matter if it was a hidden address or where she was trying to go, but he still found her. And when I was around 7 years old, then one day he came to our house, and I remember he and we were sitting in the kitchen, and he was taking out this ampoules, is that what we're calling it? Those little tablets that you can break in two. That's like ampoule, or not sure. It's like this capsule. That's the name. Yeah. So he was giving me the job. You know, kids, they're always like to help their parents in one way or another. And he made me break these capsules and put this thing into a bottle. And that was, I understood later that that was a bottle of wine. And so I did that job. And then he took the wine bottle with him and he left. And later, very, very late in the evening, he came back with a bloody shirt. And so he had actually found her. And it was very close to Christmas too. It was I think it was a little Christmas day, and he killed her. So he strangled her with a wire, and of course that was after the wine. And after that, he chopped her up in pieces. And of course, then he came back to us, and they had put me to bed for the night, so I didn't see it. I didn't understand what was going on. But at 2 o'clock in the night, then the police came. Sorry, I don't know why I'm getting all this emotional. No, as I said, we had police storming the house, dogs, everything. I don't know why this suddenly became so difficult to talk about.
It's understandable.
So of course, the police, they tried to keep me in the bedroom, but of course I was diving under them, so I kind of came into the hallway, so I saw my father on the floor with a bloody shirt and the policeman on top of him. And of course, the next day, we were living in a house that was a kind of a commune house with a lot of different kind of people and families. And everyone in that place knew what was going on. So when I came to school, I was starting to be bullied. Oh, your father is a murderer, the murderer, and blah, 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 blah. That was very, very fun. So, and of course, I was 7 years old. So I kind of tried to hit back and say, oh, be careful, or I will send my father after you. So then that kind of shut them up.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is that my mother, she kept on visiting him in prison. And I came along too. And he was stationed at that time, the most secure prison in Norway. And I was a lot of time in the hallways. And for some strange reason, I actually got to be friends with a lot of other inmates in there, grown-up men. That was all of them was murderers. And I kind of got a new family in one way, strange way.
Wow.
Even had cars coming to our home when I was 10 years old with a prisoner, male grown-up man, and we were sitting in our living room and we were talking about what he was doing. You can say that I kind of grown up in a really fast. So but of course later on my father, he came out. He was very smart, as I just said. So he was using the psychiatry to go that way and to get out. So, and of course, when he got out, I was 11 years old, and I set my foot down and said, no, you're not going to enter back into our house. So then we were living under death threat for the next 4 years. So I was ready to kill or be killed for those 4 years. And I wanted to protect my family. So I've become the family's protector very, very young. Because my
At
mother,
11 years, at 11 years old.
Yeah. So my mother, she wasn't able to do any kind of resistance to this man. And I had a sister, and she was kind of, she was going in to hide. So I was actually the only one that wanted to protect the family from him trying to get in and do stuff. And oh, trust me, I had a lot of marks around my neck. I was using a scarf most of the time because I have strangling marks around my neck.
And do you still have a relationship with your father? Is he still alive?
Yeah, he's still alive. I have forgiven him long time ago, because I know that his upbringing was like hell, big time. His mother and his father, they were beating him out big time, very often in the middle of the street. And sometimes in the winter, when he was around 7 years old, he was actually sleeping together with the pigs outside in the farm to keep himself warm, to not freeze to death.
So you still keep in touch with him, and you communicate with him?
Well, a little bit now and then.
Mm-hmm. And what was the point where you started to have compassion towards him? We're at the 2-minute mark, by the way.
Okay. No, for many years I hated him big time, but over the years, as I was growing older, I was also kind of being more and more spiritual and changed gradually because of that. But I also heard more and more of his background story. Of course, I don't say it's okay what he did, but I can kind of understand where he come from.
You had understanding, and through the understanding, you had compassion. Yeah.
So one thing I learned for myself is that I was not going to continue the generation's curse.
Right. That's amazing awareness for a small child.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible awareness. And you seem to have grown up with this very old and wise head on your shoulders.
Well, the wisdom is there, but I must confess that I am struggling with deep depressions.
That's
so
understandable.
The first big one occurred when I was around 13. That was when it was really heavy to live with the death threats and everything that was going on. But kind of deep dives is still continuing.
It sounds like the source of the depression is unresolved and unhealed trauma, And I think that that you're doing it. You are healing your trauma. You're consciously working with the trauma, and you're doing incredible things with your life, internationally, globally.
That I'm using my trauma and my depressions. I'm using them kind of as of course, I go down deep, but I'm also kind of doing the self-study of what's going on, triggers and all these kind of things, and what can heal you, what can bring you up again, and is it possible to get back the spark, and all these kind of things. That is a good thing to study, because there's too many people who are writing about books about deep depression who has never even been there, and having one or two, 3 deep depressions is easy to get out of those compared to the chronic one.
And that is the essence of alchemy: taking your pain, taking your trauma, and transmuting it into something that propels you forward and helps you and other people in your life, which is exactly what you're doing. So I commend you for being brave and being on that path. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to ask you all to save your questions, but maybe write them down and then ask them later. Is that okay with everybody? Because I would like the 3 ladies to have the opportunity to share their story and then speak to each other with questions, and then everybody else have questions, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your share. Okay, Anna, I'm going to come to you, and then Brenda. So, are you there, Anna?
I'm here. Hi. Okay. So almost same situation as Kate. I was born into a family of absolute chaos. My father was a suspected serial killer. He actually ended up only killing 2 people, so not technically 1, but close enough. My first conscious memory, is my 2nd birthday, sitting in my high chair, my birthday cake, and the police breaking in the door and arresting my father. And I was told my whole growing up like that, he was innocent, right? But the name, my last name, Stone, it was all over the media. My grandfather was sheriff, so his son committed these killings, and it was right in the serial killer height in California, in the 80s, like late 70s, early 80s. So he was dubbed the coin dealer killer. And my whole childhood was filled with that exact same, like you're the murderer's daughter, that kind of stuff. It's even followed me to 2017, actually. That even happened when I was teaching at a high school here in LA. Someone's parent found out about it and said they didn't want me teaching their child because my father was a murderer. My father was deceased at this point, and I was 2. Like, I mean, come on. But so I had to deal with that growing up. But then on top of that, I had to deal with my mother, who, there's undiagnosed bipolar disorder at the time. And that generation, for my dad's parents and my mom, those 2 generations there, they are about sweeping things under the rug severely. So the things that happened, no one talked about. We weren't allowed to ask questions, that kind of stuff. My mom was very mentally ill. She tried to end my life twice when I was just an infant, or right after that happened. Like I was, my family caught her trying to, I guess, not suffocate me, like a pillow twice. So they moved my crib into the hallway instead of getting her help. Right? They just moved the crib into the hallway to monitor her. So needless to say, my childhood was pretty traumatic, and a lot of abuse going on, and like sexual abuse and things like that too. And then my mom kicked me out when I was 12, literally kicked me out, never let me back in the house. And I was homeless, like from age 12 on. And I took myself to school every day and acted like everything was fine, and literally was sleeping in an abandoned building for about 6 months before someone's mother took me in. And then from then I was just kind of couch surfing till I got my own apartment at 14, which that's crazy, but I'm grateful that back then things were a little more lax with rules about minors than they are today. But yeah, so, that's caused me a lot of problems, not trusting people, not, like a lot of things. And it wasn't until I was 40 years old, that I got diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And and then that all made sense as to why I've had these, like, all the things, right? Like all of the idiosyncrasies that come along with severe trauma like that, not trusting people, being drawn to people that are highly toxic, being taken advantage of quite a bit, being in dangerous situations, addictions, of course, um, you know, severe panic anxiety, those kind of things. But,
Sorry, what was that?
I've always
Severe?
panic and anxiety,
Ah, okay. Thank you.
and, but over the years, like I never lost like hope somehow. I don't know how that managed to stay in me, but I always knew that like this was not right and I'm not going to repeat this with my kids. And so I mean, my oldest one, who's going to be she's 28 next month. She didn't get the very good version of me, right? But her sister, who's 9, has gotten a much better version. And because of that, my oldest has seen that and it's helped her heal as well, right? Like, so she's seen that I've made these changes and understanding what's going on. So it's about like alchemy for me, right? It's like, the process of alchemy is transforming, a substance into gold. Well, it's this kind of the same thing with regards to healing trauma. You have to first address the situation and not like Pollyanna it or sugarcoat it, and like admit to yourself like that it was as bad as you thought and probably worse, because we'd like to, kind of put that benefit of the doubt on our caregivers that they didn't know what they were doing. But if I know what I'm doing, and that's happened to me, there's no reason why they shouldn't have figured it out too, that this was wrong. So being able to confront that and understand that and, say, okay, this was not fair, but not like pity party, but, just accepting what happened and being honest about it. That's like the blackening, right? Like that's like the first phase. It's like you kind of go into the depths and not necessarily relive it, but, admit to what it is. And there's no one holding witness for you, right? Like when this is happening, everyone's sweeping it under the rug. And this is why you just ruminate on it forever until you actually have that container that allows you to be seen and heard, right? Without judgment and like understood, and that happened for me recently, very recently. And it's been amazing because through this process of understanding what actually happened, I've come to be able to help other people, which has been great. And every time I help someone, it heals me a little more, right? Because we're never fully healed, unfortunately, right? There's always work that we have to do. I believe that's for a reason. I think if we were able to walk away from this with fully healed, we would walk away and never look back. And we wouldn't do anything to help, because why would we want to relive this, right? But because we still have that little fragment of trauma left, it's like we kind of are called to help other people. We don't have a choice. This is a wounded healer archetype, right? Like this is what we do. It takes one to know one, right? And people that have trauma don't want to talk to someone that only read about it, like they want to know that someone else has been there and been able to get to the other side, right? So now, like what I'm doing is I also notice that there's a correlation between psychic phenomenon and trauma, and this is literally not a supernatural thing. In my research, I've discovered this is just a function of survivalism, literally. Like this is because we have to know what's going on. We have to be able to gauge our safety, our environment, and it's just part of our primitive like limbic system that has remained active when everyone else who had nice nurturing childhoods and didn't need to be hypervigilant, that kind of gets shut off, right? Because it's like they don't need it. Lucky them, right? Okay, but people that have severe trauma, typically, we have hypervigilance. We know when things are going to happen. We can read a room. We know when there's danger. We don't know how we know it, but we just do. And that is something that I think is a blessing and a curse, because it also alienates us further as kids and teenagers and stuff, because we can't talk to anyone about it because we're, sound crazy. But now that we're studying it actually academically, we can see that this isn't something paranormal. it's not supernatural. It's literally just a function of
You have your
evolution.
you have your research published
do.
recently, right?
Yeah, yes, yeah. So I do research on this because
and I shared that on the
Yeah.
group, and
Mhm.
also on the post that advertised this
Right.
sacred segments. There is a link to that research if you want to look at it in detail.
yeah.
To let you know that you're at the 2-minute
Cool.
mark, please continue.
Yeah, so I was just saying that we have to, like, transmuting trauma is really important. Like, we have to be able to get, like, that healing done. But like you said, Elizabeth, that at your own pace, right? It is. So I just graduated I got my second master's in consciousness studies, and in my shamanic healing or shamanic traditions class, my professor had me research my lineage for indigenous roots to see what kind of background I had. And I was very against this, but I did it, and I found out that I have Sami tribe lineage. And I then found out that the initiation for the female shaman in that tribe is to be kicked out of the village at age 12.
Whoa.
And when I found that out, I about had a heart attack. I there's no way my mother knew that, right? But it doesn't matter, because knowing that allowed me to reframe that entire experience in my life and let me know that this was for a greater purpose. Like, the things I went through, they weren't just random. Like, they were on purpose. This was something I needed to break, this cycle of this kind of mother-daughter kind of stuff. And if I had stayed in that home, I would have not had the opportunity to break it. But because I got kicked out and got away, I was able to see things more clearly and to stop that chain of events, right, from happening and recurring in my daughter's lives. So I think I'm grateful for these experiences, despite how crazy they sound. I'm grateful for them, and I would not change them if I had the opportunity to, not in a million years, because it's made me who I am. And I think that at some point we all can kind of see our trauma that way too, when it's a blessing in disguise sometimes, right? And that's where I'm at this point in my healing journey. I haven't needed to forgive because that's a long time ago. I forgive. I feel pity for them for being the way that they are, but there's no more forgiveness needed. I just need to make sure that I don't do that to my children and that they don't do it to theirs. And then my family line's good, I think. Hopefully. I don't know, Elizabeth, hopefully maybe I can meet with you and you can let me know. That'd be great. But yeah, so that's my thing, guys. And I'm still doing more research. A new study I'm working on designing a new study for some more stuff along the same lines as what's already published. But yeah, so thank you for letting me share. And I appreciate everybody else for being here and sharing your stories as well.
Thank you, Anna. Would you mind sharing your website if people want to find out more about you?
Sure, it's stoneesoteric.com.
Great. Okay. And Kate also shared her book. But if you would like to share your website, Kate, where people can find more about you, it's your name.com, is that right?
No, not this book. You can find me on keepingyourheadabovewater.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's the picture of the book.
And there's the book. Excellent. Thank you.
It's on an ebook in English.
Oh, yes. Great. Anna, thank you so much for your powerful share. And I'm going to get you all to talk after we hear from Brenda. Thank you for being here, and also for just all of you are doing such amazing things with your life. You've done such incredible global work, all of you. You're so inspirational. Brenda, are you there?
I am here.
Great.
Well, thank you, Alexis, and all the speakers before me. I'm talking about synchronicity. I've definitely never been on a call with two other women whose father also were killers. Like, this has really deeply moved me. Like, that's amazing, Alexis, that you've you've created this space for people who are doing something good in the world from something like that, because most people who've lived in our shoes don't speak about anything, and they're in shame and addiction and all those other things that were mentioned. So what happened, I certainly didn't think I was going to talk about this, but it really tapped into some things I hadn't thought about. There were so many things each of you said that was so good. One thing being that we're not really witnessed in what we went through, or we're alone, and that's partly why we suffer so much. And so it was interesting to hear this. You know, yes, we can see news stories and things like that. That's not the same thing, but it reminded me literally of the night that the day I came back to New York when my mother was murdered by my father. And, you know, the yellow, I couldn't go into the house that I grew up in. I was an adult at the time. I had just moved to Los Angeles a couple of months before I was in love. And, 10 months later, my mother was shot in the head and killed. So it's all kind of surreal. For me, it was all kind of surreal. I remember thinking I was like on some TV show about murder, that it couldn't have possibly been me. And for me, I deeply loved my mother and my father. I didn't understand why my mother stayed with him. Although after she was murdered and I did my own research, also realizing my father was a narcissist and a sociopath, just realizing also back then how hard it was, because everything was swept under the rug. And my mother was in a situation where she couldn't win. She did get a restraining order at one time during their 30-year marriage. And, it's not like the person who gets the restraining order against them has any consequences, at least in New York, they didn't then. So it was dangerous for her to get it. It was dangerous for her not to get it. And then looking at her growing up and her lack of self-esteem and my father's gaslighting of her and things like that. But I think at the time, before my mom died, I actually didn't, like, my father was so like happy and my mother was so depressed that I would often take my father's side, because, I'd rather be with someone who's like, I didn't see what he was doing behind closed doors, although guns were always a part of us, our lives, but we used to shoot together as a family. One time when I was a teenager, my mother told me that my father put a gun to her head. And then when they separated briefly, and then when they got back together, I thought my mother must be lying, because why would you take back someone who said they put a gun to your head, or who put a gun to your head? So for me, a lot of my healing and my process was seeing things how they really were versus how I wanted them to be or how I thought they were. I had to really stop making excuses for my father, because when it happened, he said there was an accident. They were fighting for days, but there were 8 hours before the police were called, and his gun, and he had many guns, disappeared. There was a mob involvement. He had a mob lawyer as far as the cleanup. And he kept saying it was an accident. And I was trying to believe that, because the thought of losing my mother and father in that one night was too much for me back then. But I knew. And so when we know intuitively, it's really hard to live with yourself. And so I'd vacillate between I love him, I hate him, I love him, I hate him. And the real healing that started to take place for me, it definitely was a journey, was when I really got that he did this, that I couldn't do, and even the forgiveness part, I couldn't just go to forgiveness because I couldn't bring my mother back. That was a complete spiritual bypass, because I tried that. And, just not talking about anything, not talking about what happened. He didn't go to prison actually for a year. He had a lawyer in place, as soon as it happened. And then he went to jail on a plea bargain, involuntary manslaughter, because the gun wasn't there. My brother agreed to the plea bargain because they had, I guess the DA said that it's possibly wouldn't have any jail time if they went to court. So it was still court, but it was a plea bargain. And so my father got 2.5 years out of 5 years, got out for good behavior. But so I vacillated between I love him, I hate him, he did this, he didn't do it. And then recognizing that he did it probably was the loneliest time in my life. So I wasn't speaking to my father. I wasn't speaking to my brother because it was my father and his stepfather who did this, and he saw it right away. And it was my brother who would say to me during the first few months after it happened, he's a murderer, he's a murderer, he's a murderer. And I just couldn't emotionally deal with that. So for me, what happened was I was an actress already. So after the severe depression and the shock, I actually put together a story in my class to get on stage with what really happened, because I was hiding those first few years and in shame. I felt really like damaged goods. I had been engaged. I broke up with my fiance at the time this happened, I'm sure, because I felt like I was so unlovable. And but it was in that loneliness and that time alone and creating my writing that I really did get my strength. I don't think I could have gotten it if I was still in a relationship with my brother, even at the time. I needed to have that solitude. And it was in that space that I started writing my poetry, which then became this story in an acting class that I just put up to be seen. And I got a standing ovation. I had a director that wanted to work with me, a producer. I kind of followed the snowball and put my first production up. Meanwhile, in an on again, off again relationship with my father. And I put it up and people would laugh and people would cry and I would be absolutely miserable when I would go home. So I went back and got a master's in spiritual psychology. And that was, so it was writing my show. Writing my show was helpful because I got to inhabit the character of my father and the other characters of my life. And you can't play yourself as a villain when you're acting. It's bad acting. And so I got to start to get compassion for my father there and see him beyond what he did that night, still being factual. And then going to the master's program, I learned how to not just get through this, but to thrive. And I learned about healthy boundaries, which was so important. When I learned healthy boundaries, I could actually forgive my father. And I did take him to court for wrongful death after he got out of prison with my brother, but from a place of self-love and self-honor versus vengeance. And that was so important for me. And also my brother and I reconciled. So all this, the forgiveness stuff that I was learning to apply toward my father, forgiveness for me being letting go of the anger and resentment I hold inside of me for what he did. When I forgave him, I took all this that I was angry at my brother, my older brother, my only brother for abandoning me. And I forgave him so we could do this court case together. And then I realized I had a huge, I was so angry at myself. I felt like I abandoned my brother. I'm so horrible. I think the biggest thing I learned was self-forgiveness. Like I had to forgive myself for trusting my father. Like, of course I trust him. He was my father, or not seeing it sooner. I think for those of us who grew up in households like that, we do like look for what's going to happen and try to, get around it. And like, how come I didn't see it? So what happened for me, my master's program was 2 years. I took my dad to court for wrongful death. I put my show back up with the new ending, which I included a ceremony of forgiveness that I put in there as well, where I threw my dad's hat over the top of a mountain. And I decided to forgive my father because I felt like if I hated any part of him, I hated a part of myself. So that was for self-love. I did a lot of inner child's work. I became the father to me that I didn't have with him. I became the mother to me. Always feel very close with my mother. And I've done my show all over the world, for like, I don't know, 15,000 people right now. And then I developed a forgiveness process because I would also do, like, I do the show and people would say, but how did you forgive him? So I really looked at how did it happen? So I have a 3-step process. The first step is moving out of denial and into acceptance of what is. That was my process because I couldn't sugarcoat my father and his mental illness. Definitely had mental illness. And in that process, though, I realized I was very depressed for about 6 years. And I realized it was because I had not really gotten in touch with my anger. I was someone who I would inwardly, like I would overeat, I would overwork out, I would isolate myself. instead of lashing out. But the healthy release of anger needed to be in that first part. And in the first, it's 3-step process. In that first step, healthy release of anger, I went to a primal scream workshop. There was other, freeform writing, things like that. But it was about actually embracing being a victim. So many people in society are like, I'm not going to be a victim. So they end up being a victim, or they end up, unleashing their anger at people who don't deserve it because they didn't deal with the real stuff. So it's like, yes, unleash your anger in a very healthy way where nobody gets hurt. We don't hurt ourselves. So that was one of the exercises in the first step. And then the second step is, you don't want to languish in that. The second step is giving up your need to be right. So that's where, and I was definitely very righteous growing up in a household where people are crazy. You're like, but I know this isn't right. It serves you when you're in a situation like that, but it doesn't serve you later on, that attachment or thinking things have to be your way. So it's giving up your need to be right. And in this stage, it is moving out of being a victim and having compassion for people, people who hurt you, if you can. I, again, don't think anybody has to do anything. And I've worked with so many people as a director with people's stories that, you know what, if you don't want to go there and you don't want to forgive someone, by all means, do what you need to do, or just love yourself focus. But for me, this is the process. It's almost like doing an interview with my father. How were you brought up? What was your mother like? And I knew his mother was horrendous, like typical classic, like how to raise a sociopath. What were you like when you were a child? Things like that, to actually get out of my head.
Sorry to interrupt you. Just to let you know, you're at the 2-minute mark.
Okay, thanks. And then also I found a picture of my father when he was a little kid, before the personality came in, before all these other things came in. And so that's really about having compassion. But here's the thing, it's never condoning what they did, but having that compassion opened my heart. So for me, I was able to really have some wonderful relationships in my life after I did a lot of inner child's work, learning to trust myself, learning to forgive myself. I was married for 13 years. Then, we adopted a child, and we broke up, and now I'm with someone really wonderful. So for me, it was learning to trust myself and self-forgiveness, trusting myself, knowing how to set a healthy boundary, and then being able to, vet people and open my heart again, know that I was strong enough to be hurt again. Because one thing with me is I didn't want to have that huge loss again, losing a whole family. So that was hard, but that was hard for me to really open up. But my lesson, my path is always, how do I love myself enough? How do I become more self-aware? And how do I open myself to people who are on that same level with me? And then the third step of the process is really being grateful for the lessons that I've learned. And for me, it's about, then giving these lessons and exercise in that stage for people or clients, because I've been coaching since 2006 on forgiveness and 2014 on storytelling, is what was I gonna, volunteering, because sometimes we're so in our stuff. So like for me, when I was in the loneliest, I would volunteer. I volunteered at a children's hospital. I volunteered with animals and things like getting out of yourself. So even if you're not able to give the lesson to other people, just know that someone else has it worse and someone else has it better always. So that's it.
I'd like to commend all three of you for allowing yourselves to be vulnerable, because there's incredible strength in your vulnerability, and it's very, very beautiful. Thank you so much for allowing yourself to share your stories.
Thanks. Can I say my book too?
Yes, please share your book and also your website.
I don't know if it's opposite. So My Father Killed My Mother and Married My Aunt, Forgiving the Unforgivable. It's a Kindle book, and it's part memoir, and then it's part and then the workbook, the 3-step forgiveness process. And my main website is forgivenessandfreedom.com, an AND in the middle, forgivenessandfreedom.com. And
you have another website that you'd like to share?
Oh, I do have my storytelling website, which is Soul Story Lounge, but it's HTTP. / Soul Story Lounge, versus with the S there. And I'm very active on Facebook.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so we've heard from the three ladies. Now I want to ask you all together, not just the three ladies, but anybody. Does anybody have any questions before you all have questions for each other?
Yeah, I have a question, and it can go out to, is that all right, Alexis? I'm jumping in.
Please, go ahead.
So I just first of all want to say how incredible all three of you that have shared today, what extraordinary stories, extraordinary people, and your own journey of healing and sort of navigating your journeys, navigating from childhood onward. I mean, what an incredible example each of you is in terms of what's possible when you sort of get into the nitty gritty of your own life and are not afraid to look, and to dive deeply into it. And what an amazing gift each of you, is to the world, really. Imagine to anyone who crosses your path, you're such a gift. You're an example of what's possible. So thank you. I guess my question is to any of you who want to respond to this is, what do you find people have the hardest time hearing from your stories? What is it they have a hard time with? Do they come back with sort of defensiveness, or, oh, come on, it couldn't be that bad? Or, what do you find is the response you get that is the hardest to deal with?
Well, I can answer that, because I've had a successful one-woman show. I've performed all over the world. And so for a lot of audiences, and I remember one time, but everything I put in is very deliberate. I've worked through everything. This woman was in the audience, this was many years ago now, and she was like, why do you have to forgive your mother? That makes no sense. Like, she could understand why I would forgive my father. And I said, I had to forgive her for the model she set for me of how it's okay to be treated by someone who says they love you. And, whether she got it or not, you can usually see on someone's face if they're still in anger and righteousness and victim. So that was one thing. And then I was performing in Arizona, and we had to move where I was performing to a different temple because one of the people in the congregation, who didn't even know me, it was before I was there, was like, nobody should tell me I need to forgive. And she was someone whose father had killed her mother. I wasn't saying you had to forgive, but so to me that was sad, and I wasn't going to argue with it. And it was great what we did, but those are the kind of things that make me sad, because I know from when I was really like shut down that they're having a hard time. They're having a hard life. Yeah. So that's my experience.
Would anybody else like to respond?
Yeah, I think I actually can relate to what Brenda was saying, that a lot of people, if you tell the story, that they're saying that, how can you forgive? Yeah, also my mother, but of course, how can I forgive my father? Because what he did was not possible to forgive. And yeah, now I forgot the name. My father also tried to kill a second woman several years later, and then after that he was even dating another woman that he was going to Spain with, and I followed them to Spain together with them, so I would be sure that she would be coming back to Norway alive.
Wow.
So so people are kind of thinking, why did you do that? Why did you take the chance to do it? Well, what kind of option do you have?
It's almost like you took on the responsibility of, making sure that those women were safe.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. You did. That's a huge responsibility for you to take on, and it's incredible that you did that.
Well, I think that my past, growing up with him, as I heard also from the others, that I wouldn't have been the past without, because it had turned me into me, and I'm a very, very strong person. And for that sake, then a woman who, let's say, if you're a woman and you're going on a dating And if you are showing tendency to be a little bit weak or easy as a person to be maneuvered around, well, then I think that you are a much more bigger target for narcissists, psychopaths, and all of this. But for me, men like that, they will turn around in the door and get the other way.
Right. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to ask or anything that they want to say to the other women?
It's Carl here. I was just thinking, because it's kind of the opposite of Christiane's question, but I can imagine when you're first sharing your story with people who know comprehension, probably you get like reactions of disbelief, or people don't quite know how to respond or to take it in. What advice would you have to people who haven't been through those situations, who, you know, to be in our best position to be able to support and enable somebody who might come looking to open up, to share as part of their like healing journey? What do we need to do, like, to not put up any barriers, to be open and supportive? And, you know, because, you know, the stories are just so, sometimes you could say unbelievable, you know, it for your average person to be in the situation to go, oh, well, you know, they must feel completely helpless. So how can we help anybody else in that situation going forward if they're not as strong as you, are not as like able to stand in their power and tell and get it out, but we need to help them with that? What can we do?
Can I take this? So I think my research, it's, again, the bearing witness is, the lack of witness is the number one reason that I've come across so far that people stay in the trauma state, like active trauma state. You don't have to take it on yourself. Like when we tell our story, it's normal for us. Like you have to understand that this is our normal. Like we don't understand, unfortunately, for the people that we traumatize by telling our story, but like we're not trying to do that. We're just trying to talk about it because it's our normal. Like, that's our experience. So if you're somebody, like, you know, don't ask someone how they're doing if you don't want to hear the answer, right? Like, you know, so if you're going to ask how someone's doing and they start to tell you, it takes 8 minutes to sit and listen to somebody, just not say anything, just hear them out. And that 8 minutes can literally help someone get over some very deep-seated trauma. 8 minutes of your time. That's it. You don't have to internalize that story. You don't have to agree with the story. You don't have to even believe the story, to be honest with you. You just have to hear them and say, I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry. But I'm sorry that happened to you. That's it. That's all. Like, we know that you guys can't fix it. And also, the thing is we're here. We made it past that. Like, we're not, you know, in danger anymore like that. So we're just trying to get that wrapped up. Like, it's just the process, you know, and people get really bent about it, about like, oh, you know, trauma dumping. Well, I'm sorry. Like, this is the reality of our world. It's crappy a lot of the time. And we have a lot of crappy experiences. And there's about 1 in 4 people walking around with trauma right now. And that's why the DSM doesn't diagnose complex post-traumatic stress disorder on, you know, because if they did, our country would be ranking really high, okay, in this. And that is not the look we want, right? So this is something that, you know, 1 out of 4 people are carrying around some serious trauma. And all it takes is 8 minutes. So I'm just saying, like, that's my call to action here, is that take the 8 damn minutes. You know what I mean? Do your part, a community part, right? Like we can't survive alone. Like, we live in a social setting. Like, that's how we function as humans. And when we don't have it, that's when we become depressed, anxious, you know, turn to alcohol, drugs, whatever it is. Like, we just need to be heard. So we don't need anything from you other than that. Like, that's it. Like, we don't expect you to have the answers. Like, no, that's never, I'm sure that the other ladies will agree here that when we tell people stuff, we know that they're not going to give us the solution, right? Like, am I right? Like, we know that it's just our story. Yeah. It's like, if you want to understand who I am, you have to understand this about me. I'm sorry. You know, that's how I come with this. And
I-
you need to psychoanalyze it for me. None of that. You just need to listen. That's it. You know,
I
mean,
I love everything you said, because it is really is true. All you have to say is, I hear you. Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
And also I love that, because it also is that no apology. Why should we have to apologize for our story? And that's with the over responsibility of other people. So, you know, because I've been sharing so freely for so long, you know, sure, I'll put a trigger warning in occasionally if I feel like that's necessary. But I also feel like if the people are in the room with me, they're supposed to hear it. And I believe everybody is whole and complete. And if they're triggered for some reason, then they should go work with that. That's what I've experienced. Like in audiences, they start remembering something. And the way I feel is that since they have access to all the help that we all have as well, they can go heal that and have more of an opening and experience more good and stuff like that. That's my take on it. Yeah.
Annalie, I'd like to ask you about your research, particularly, you know, to do with the psychic stuff, and how everyone that experiences trauma on a very deep level has this heightened awareness, and you all said it in one way or another. You know, you have this extrasensory perception of, you know when something is coming, you know what people are feeling, right? You have awareness that's off the scale. And you know, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the data shows that 97.5% of people that have psychic abilities of some sort also have a history of moderate to severe childhood trauma. And this, you know, continues basically through life, right, until we figure out what's going on. And what we found is there's a genetic component to this. It's actually in our DNA. So on chromosome 7, it's a TCNR non-protein coding gene that gets turned on in late adolescence, like, you know, like around, right before puberty. If you have a nice, nurturing, loving home, that gene gets activated, and like this, you know how kids are really psychic, you know, like they're really like in tune. That, you know how it gets shut off, like it turns off, like at some point, this is what happens is this gene. So this is the Institute of Noetic Science did a study in 2022, and they found this genetic component, and it's activated for people that have no, like, you know, have a nice, loving, nurturing home. So that gets shut off. We don't need it anymore. It takes a lot of energy from us, right? Like to have these abilities, right? Like to be hypervigilant, to know these things, it takes energy. So if we don't need it, it's deactivated, and like we go about our merry way, and like, you know, we don't have that so much anymore. But for the rest of us, like there's too much going on, and the energy expenditure to activate that gene is not available. Like we are using it actively daily. So it has to stay on. And then that, again, like that further isolates us, because now we have weird experiences that when we tell people about, they say we're nuts or crazy, or like, you know, hearing voices, whatever. Again, like this is all in scientific research now that's been peer reviewed, like, which is amazing to me. So, and Brenda, I have a PhD in spiritual psychology. I just got it last month. And I feel like we might have gone to the same school. So I'm not sure.
Congratulations.
But, yeah, thanks. And this is like, so now that I'm, you know, have access to this research, they've been researching this for a minute, for about 20 years, but it just hasn't reached the mainstream, right? Like, because what it's showing is that it is real. It's not something scary. It's not the devil. It's not, you know, like the things people say. It's literally just a function of we needed it, and we still need it. You know, and it can be problematic at times. Like, you know, Alexis, I went and got a psych eval done because I was so freaked out about hearing the things I was hearing and seeing the things that I thought maybe I would, you know, had some issues, right? And I
know you're highly psychic, right?
Yeah, like I had a whole workup done. They did PET scans, MRIs, like all that stuff, and did all the assessments, and nothing. They came back with a CPTSD diagnosis. That's what they gave me. Wow. And I was like, what? And then they're like, we don't know how to explain the rest of the stuff that you're experiencing. But I had, as a scientist, as a research scientist of 20 years, I had to rule out that mental illness component before I would even entertain the idea of psychic stuff.
That's so
And
interesting.
what, you know, now that I'm left with that is ruled out, like, okay, what's going on? So that's what I've been dedicating the last 5 years of my life to, is just researching this and finding out, you know, purely selfish reasons, right? Like, because I wanted to understand myself, but through that, I'm able to help other people understand that too, you know? And I think it's important for people to not feel weird about it, like to know that it's a gift, it's a blessing, it kept us safe, you know?
I want to throw this question at all of you. This idea of how, you know, we're meant to experience what we're meant to experience, whether it's kind of like, you know, our karma, our path, and that was our journey. You know, this is what we incarnated to experience. The traumas are part of the journey, and we signed up for it. What do you think about that? And not only that element, but also this idea of, you know, how there's two schools of thought, that there's like the mental illness component, or there's the kind of demonic or like dark energy kind of component to it. And, you know, what are your thoughts about each of those? I know that's a lot of questions, but, you know, tell me what you think about everything I said.
Yeah, I think that we are taken into this life and have our lessons to learn. And I think that so many people, they are just becoming a victim. They're not learning from the process. They're not learning. They're not diving deep into themselves at all. They're just putting a cover on it because they don't want to see it, and they don't want to remember it, and they don't want to feel it. So it becomes like a boiler that it doesn't do you good at all. And those people are ending up like drug addicts or alcoholics or killing themselves, and the list is long. But I think that if you really want to know yourself, and of course you are, all these kind of different experiences are triggering different kind of stuff in yourself. There's so many things you have to learn. And when you learn them, I have this quote that I find it very, very nice, and that is, my mess, my message to the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
My
so
mess.
you can help others to deal with their mess.
Right.
Because I have been diving deep into the stuff that I have been had to deal with. And then I can hopefully help other people to figure out where they are in the kind of, what kind of depression they are struggling with. Because there's not just trauma in a young age or in life that can actually make you being depressed. There's so many different kind of labels and things that you can be depressed from. So and of course you need to figure out where you are, what kind of camp you are belonging to, before you even start a kind of a self-treatment.
And do you think that an individual soul signs up for their life being taken before they get here? Do you understand my question?
No.
Okay, so I mean, do you think that a soul chooses that they're going to be murdered before they incarnate?
I don't know. Possibility is there, but the thing is that I think that we are putting too much drama on it, actually, because we are coming and going as an eternal cycle forever. And of course, we will be killed. We will be the killers. You'll have lives without anything, no drama at all. So we will kind of be playing out all the different kind of scenery.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Alexis, when I died, that was clear to me, right? Like when I had my near-death experience, like
I didn't know that you'd had one.
You didn't? Oh, okay. In 2016, I died for 6 minutes in the hospital. And I had a whole thing which changed all of my perception of everything. And I understood completely, like when I was on the other, whatever you want to call it. And I was talking to myself. It was a version of me, and looked just like me, you know, woman, me, was, you know, told me some stuff. And like, it was very clear to me that we're here to learn lessons, that emotions are the lesson, like emotions are the lessons. We don't have them on that side in the same capacity we have here. So it's like all of them were supposed to be in it, right? So yeah, all of the experiences are for that, to experience grief, to experience sadness, to experience love, joy, all of those things. If we don't, you know, get past the victim mentality, like that whole I'm just, oh, for me kind of vibe, we're going to end up in a self-destructive path, right? And we do have out. So like when I died, that was one of my exit strategies out. Like I had already known that my life was going to be off the rails at that point, and I needed this to reset. And that's what it was. It was I call it my karmic bitch slap, because it was like, get it together, girl. Like that was literally the message I got. It was like, what are you doing?
You could have a choice whether to leave at that moment or come back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's definitely, you know, I think that with regard to like demons and stuff, I think the demons are in us. Like we're our own, yeah, like it's a fragment of, I mean, I'm sure there's some actual forces out there, but when it comes to this stuff, it's like we can be our own worst enemy and allow ourselves to ruminate on things and focus on little things instead of seeing the bigger picture.
That makes sense.
Then can cause a stagnation. Right?
And what about this idea of like soul contracts? And do you think that a soul contract includes, you know, being murdered?
I think that if you, like, what I got was that the experiences that you experience are there to teach you the lessons that you need to learn. So maybe there's some aspect of free will in there, like as in how it's going to happen might not be known to you, but it's going to something's going to happen. And I have this quote here I just wanted to share with you guys. It's a, you know, Francis Weller said, initiation, which I consider all these events initiations, right? Like they're all initiations.
Sure.
Is a contained encounter with death. And then Martin Prechtel says, those who don't fight death in adolescence are destined to live in a walking death. And that to me like resonates. Like if you haven't figured, like if you haven't had some trauma, like think about the things that we could be upset about, right? I look at other people and they're upset about the silliest things to me. It's like, are you joking? You're mad about your TV show getting canceled? What? Like there's so much other stuff out there that is so much more important. And if we haven't had, like, we have a different perspective because of our trauma, like we know what's serious, right? And what can be just laughed at, because it's like, that's so silly, you know, like in the grand scheme of things anyways, right? And so I think that is also a blessing, right? I can't do water cooler talk. I don't know about you ladies, but I can't. Right?
Thing there?
What was
Sorry,
that?
you were cutting out. Say it again.
I'm saying that, can I shoot in a thing there, a comment there? So when it comes to the soul contracts and this different kind of lives, I do remember several of my past lives, and I have been killed and I have killed.
Mm-hmm.
So in many different ways.
Yeah, when you're on the other side, you understand that this is a eternal, like a constantly going over and over again thing, and it's not like it is now.
Yeah. I don't think, I mean, I don't think, do I know that I don't think the soul contract includes how we're going to die. I believe that there's a date, like that's my belief system, but I don't know how or something like that. As far as the demon stuff and things like that, I do think that like alcohol, drugs, like being out of your body, that can create an opening for darker forces to come in. You know, and I've witnessed some people exorcising that and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I think there's also an element of free will in things, but yeah, it's very.
What about the soul contract, Brenda? What do you think? Do you think
I believe I chose my parents for the lessons that I'm getting.
Do you believe that your mother knew before she incarnated that part of her contract? Do you believe in that?
I believe in soul contracts, but I don't believe that. I don't know, so I can't claim like I know this, but I don't think that someone is like, I'm gonna come in and be killed at this time.
Yeah,
I think
that's not part of it. That's outside of the remit.
I mean, it would more seem like I'm going to be of service and see what happens, or let's play this game and see what happens. I don't think, I mean, in the work that I've studied, it's not like we know why we're coming in that moment, or I'm sorry, we know and then we forget, but I've never.
So the act of taking somebody's life is an interference, perhaps, in the karmic contract or the soul contract?
I don't know, because like we've heard here, we all have died, we've all killed, I mean, in some ways it's just about neutralizing all of that. It does
You
feel
know,
like a movie on a screen.
Alexis,
I was just going to ask you, Carl. I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's only my own personal opinion, of course, but I feel that it's certainly not written in black and white, but I feel there's probably an element of accepting the risk that it might happen as part of working with that person in that relationship to try and help them deal with specific emotional challenges or other kind of challenges in a particular lifetime. So I do think we would come in being fully aware of the challenges and the risks, but nothing set in black and white in that regard. But we would come in saying, you know, this is something that might happen, but, you know, and because we know about the kind of intransience of, like, it's all just make believe and story and drama for us to learn the lessons here on this like 3D plane, that we don't put as much importance to our ending as we do, because we only see it as a release of spirit from being bound and going through suffering into something that's far better. And the only thing we may be concerned about is whether that passing might be painful physically and emotionally. You know, so I do think we come in with an awareness of the risk, but we don't know for sure. And I think we do freely accept that risk because we're working with people we love deeply, and we're often within the same soul group if we're supporting each other to such an important extent. And so we have a deep spiritual soul connection, and we play similar parts for each other in many different lifetimes. So it's not always I'm going to be the one who gets that, you know, done in. Yeah. Other people might, you know, or that person might have played that role for us in a previous lifetime, or expecting to kind of play an equally kind of vulnerable, like, role in another lifetime. That's my views.
I would like to have a future session where you bring your guide Katarang in, and we ask your guide about soul contracts and elements of soul contracts, and I think that would be useful. Also, I would like to have a future sacred segments where it's completely focused on near-death experiences, because it seems to be a very common experience among the spiritual community, which I think that needs to be discussed and explored. In closing this session, I would like to put a couple of questions to all of you in the form of a statement. And I would like you to finish this statement for me, one by one, each of you. Forgiveness is, and I'm going to ask Anna first to finish that statement, please.
Forgiveness is being able to trust myself again, that I know what's best for me and that I'm making the right decisions.
Thank you. Carl.
Forgiveness is acceptance.
Thank you. Kate.
Forgiveness is to forgive yourself and forgive everyone that was participating in the trauma, and see life in the bigger picture.
Thank you so much. Brenda.
Forgiveness is letting go of the resentment and anger and grief we have within ourselves in relation to an event, a person, place, or thing that hurt us, so that we are more at peace.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much for sharing that.
And
And for
sorry,
having the
Alexis, I just need to say, just after what I said and reflecting on what I said, it even brought home to me a particular case where I have not accepted and have not fully forgiven, and I do think that was important for me to hear myself say that and remind myself that unless we accept, everything about that situation, we can't move into forgiveness because we're always trying to point fingers or whatever else, and I just realized I hadn't done that myself entirely in a particular situation.
That's a profound realization. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to say thank you all for having the courage and the bravery to speak from your heart and to tell your stories, and really so grateful to you all. What I would like to also say is that I would like to end this session with gratitude for the lives of everyone present and in spirit. And I just want to go around the group one final time and close in gratitude with a statement of I am grateful for. And I'm going to start with you, Anna.
I'm grateful for my experiences and my resiliency.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anna. Brenda.
I'm grateful for my self-awareness and my ability to have joy and connection.
Gorgeous. Thank you. Carl.
The difficult one. I want to say I'm grateful to these three wonderful ladies for bearing witness to their healing journey, to everything it took to stand here today and be such strong, powerful women who honor what they've been through and have been able to move into that position of understanding and acceptance and forgiveness, because it's such a lesson to anyone who will come and watch this later on. So, your ability to stand as witness to the ability to overcome such trauma is powerful. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for saying the words I wanted to say. Thank you. Kate.
I'm thankful for the person I have become because of my past. Not only this past, but several other pasts before, because I see myself as a much more wholer person.
That's incredible. It's incredible. May I ask what that stone is that you're wearing?
It's Indian moonstone.
It's beautiful, really beautiful.
I bought it in Mongolia.
Amazing, amazing. I want to apologize for just before this group started, I got red sauce all over my t-shirt.
Can't see it. We can't see it.
Completely inappropriately. So I hope that hasn't added to any trauma. I was battling with myself, like, do I change my t-shirt? No, I just have to be myself. And it is what it is. Thank you all so much.
Stage props.
Yes, you're all so amazing. You're such incredible people, all of you. I love you all. And we'll stay in touch and hope to see you in a couple of weeks. The lady that is next on Sacred Segments is the lady Christiane, who was on the group call earlier. She's incredible. And she's an author, she's a breathwork practitioner, and she does lots of amazing things. And you're all invited. Please come back and please stay in touch. And thank you for sharing your souls and your heart.
Thank you for hosting this incredible
yes.
Alexis. Thank you.
Always lovely to see you.
I have a question for Brenda, if it's not too late.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just a little bit amazed when she was talking about the prison sentence for her father. That was really, really short.
Because it was domestic violence, they don't take it seriously. That's the only reason I could believe. But I mean, it was plead down. but yeah, it was
I had
crazy.
the same
1.5
thought.
5 years, and he got out in 2.5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
Crazy.
taken seriously.
My father got 21 years and then 10 years of security thing that they are calling it afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, he was really, really smart. So he was using the psychiatry system. So he got out.
Oh yeah, my father was smart too, believe me. Well, he didn't talk to anybody. He had a lawyer in place right away. And he went on to have a fairly good life with my aunt who married him afterwards before he died. Things that I
You're
found
all
out.
such incredible, dynamic, powerful, beautiful souls. Really, you're all amazing. You really
Yeah,
are.
I feel honored to be here on this panel. Like, that was amazing, Alexis.
Beautiful people. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of the day. Was there something?
I would say it's the first time I'm actually talking with other women who is experiencing the same thing.
Me too.
Same. Yeah.
It's powerful, right? Let's do this again.
Crazy.
With
Let's
our
do this
fathers.
again, please.
Yeah. We have the
Yeah.
chat.
You should
still,
make sure you
right?
stay connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
the
think what we
chat,
have is
so-
very powerful. Yeah.
So I'll keep one of the group chats active and delete the other one. Okay.
Okay. Thank
That'd
you.
be great. Thank
Cool.
you.
All right. Love to you all, and
Bye,
have a
guys.
beautiful rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for sharing. See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.